Hello, and thank you for joining us today for the Virginia Master Naturalist Statewide Conference session, What Invasive Plants Are Harming Your Part of Virginia? My name is Beth Mizell, and I'm the Program Director for Blue Ridge PRISM, for Partnership for Regional Invasive Species Management. I'm joined by Kevin Heffernan, Stewardship Biologist for Virginia's Department of Conservation and Recreation, or DCR, and Susan McLaughlin-Gitlin, a Master Naturalist with the Allegheny Highlands chapter, who is the lead for the Master Naturalist Project documenting escaped non-native plants with EDDMaps. This session will introduce you to the new Master Naturalist Project and get you started in using the smartphone app EDDMaps to report invasive plants in your area. The objective of this project is to develop a core of skilled citizen scientists to identify and report invasive plants in Virginia. Susan will tell you more about that project later in the session. Today you will learn what makes a plant invasive. You will learn more about the Virginia Master Naturalist Project, documenting escaped non-native plants with EDDMaps. And lastly, how to use the EDDMaps app to document and report invasive species. Now let's get started with learning more about what makes a plant an invasive plant. Kevin Heffernan will give you an introduction and discuss how DCR biologists use the data from EDDMaps.
Hello, I'm Kevin Heffernan. I'm Stewardship Biologist for Department of Conservation and Recreation, Division of Natural Heritage, and I'll be talking about how we at DCR develop our invasive plant list out of the many species of plants that we could be talking about. How and why are we talking about the ones we're talking about? So many of you are probably already familiar with the DCR invasive plant species list. Currently there's 90 species listed on here, and they're ranked high, medium, and low. And there's a set of 10 species that are early detection species that aren't maybe fully established here yet, but of concern, even though they're not found in Virginia or are still relatively low abundance in Virginia. So this is the list, and it can be found on our website. And how our question today is, how do species get on this list? How do we define invasive plant species? So it works for me this way. It starts usually at home. My wife will come home from a nursery, a greenhouse or something with a new plant and go, I found this really colorful plant for the backyard. I got the perfect place in the corner. And I look at it and I'm like, is this plant invasive? I don't recognize it. It's got some interesting characters that suggest it might be on the aggressive side, but I don't know the species. I've never seen it before. Maybe it's fine. How do we find out if this is an invasive species or a lovely new member of our garden family? So where it really begins, though, is we have to take a step back and ask ourselves a couple other questions before we get to, is a plant invasive? Here we have a species I think many of us are familiar with, but is this species native or not? When we ask that question, we have to ask ourselves really before we answer, is it native or not? We can't even say yes, even though we know we love this bird and we make great use of it and admire it, but where in the world are we? We can't say whether it's native or not unless we specify or are clear about where we are in the world. And all this red zone here, most of North America, some of Central America, that is the known range of, and the known native range of our great bald eagle. All the rest of the world, that is not a native species. So when we talk about a native species, and we have to know native to know what's invasive, we have to be talking about a specific place. Specify our place. Do we mean city of Richmond, Central Virginia, Virginia, Mid-Atlantic region, North America? What? You have to specify your area of interest. What about this species? Is this a native species? Is this a native species to Virginia? or something else? Something else we're often talking about when we talk about invasive species are introduced species. So we have native species, those species that have been here for recorded history and evolved in this place, or naturally spread to a place without assistance of human beings. Introduced species are species that are introduced into a new landscape, a new habitat, a new ecosystem by human beings. So human beings brought this creature, our lovely Holstein cow, to the New World from Europe, where it is derived from the auroch and the native cattle to much of Eurasia. This red zone here is the native range of the creature from which we get all our commercial cattle. The other zones there are the two other species that have led to development of commercial cattle, but our species comes from that large Eurasian stretch there. So Holsteins are introduced, but fortunately, they're not roaming wild and free through Shenandoah National Park or maybe your local park. They're pretty much dependent on us, and they stay in place. They stay in more or less in their pastures where we intend them to be. But what about this species, our honeybee? We all love the honeybee. We love the honey it produces, but is this native? No, it is not native to North America. No honeybees evolved in North America. There are many, many bees, something like 400 species of bees in North America, but no honeybee. We brought this over, and yet it was successful in escaping cultivation, establishing in the wild, and we call that naturalized. So when we bring a species into a new habitat or ecosystem and it escapes our control, then we call it, and it reproduces freely and wild, we call that naturalized. But as far as I know, I don't think anyone complains too much, except maybe a few people who are maybe allergic to bee sting, complain about honeybees in the wild in North America. This is the known range now is almost all the world. There's honeybees roaming because we've moved them around. There are originally about 7 different species of honeybees. Now, what about this species? You might not be able to make it out quite clearly, but this is kudzu, as many of us in the South probably instantly recognize. Is this native to the South? No, it is not. Is it naturalized? Yes, we know it is naturalized. So it's introduced, it's naturalized, it's reproducing free and on its own in the wild. But what else? What else is it's having a tremendous impact on the natural landscape of the habitat of the forest, as you can see it overtopping trees, shrubs, and then it's also having an economic impact directly here by converting this former house into what looks like a hobbit house. And so kudzu, an introduced species that is having a powerful negative effect on the ecology and our economy by altering ecosystem processes, having direct impacts on human infrastructure and economy. So it comes with some harm. It's causing harm in the landscape. So this is what leads us to our full definition of an invasive species. And this comes from an executive order that's been in place for over 20 years now, was signed in 1999. And it reads, invasive species are introduced species that cause or have the potential to cause ecological or economic harm or harm to humans. So 2 key words here in this definition are introduced, and that means by humans, not by themselves, and harm. So there are many non-native species in North America, but few of them are causing harm. So we'll get into more of that in a minute. So remember this definition. I'll come back to it again, but to give a little more context and to give you a sense of how important the work that you'll be doing in this project, where you're identifying a particular plant in a particular place at a particular time gives us very important data in determining the invasiveness of a species and letting us understand what our needs are in managing the landscape going forward. 400,000, that's a big number. And what is that? That is all the plant species we estimate are on Earth. They've not all been identified by science, but that is the number that scientists who do this work estimate are out there for us to formally identify as vascular plants on Earth. So that's a lot, quite a lot of species. In North America, we have 18,000 species in our flora. Now here I'm referring to just species that are reproducing in the wild without our help. I'm not referring to horticultural species, agricultural species, insofar as those stay in their place. But those that jump the fence and begin reproducing on their own out in the woods, in rivers and streams, those become naturalized. They're part of this list of 18,000 plus or minus species. An astonishing number, given the numbers I've shown you already. Over the past 500 years, we've introduced or brought to North America 30,000 plant species. Quite a lot of species. It's hard to imagine. But maybe if you look at a lot of plant and bulb catalogs, maybe you would believe that. 5,000 species, plus or minus. These are plant species. Of those 30,000 that we've brought here, 5,000 have jumped the fence and now reproduce on their own in the wild in North America. This is a number I pretty much made up, but this is a conservative number of species that are somebody or another has identified as invasive in North America. So you can see this number is much smaller than 30,000. It's much smaller than 400,000. It's larger than 90. But this is all in North America, and this is a kind of conservative estimate of species that are actually causing harm, measurable harm in our ecosystems. Let's look at Virginia. 3,164 plant taxa are identified in the flora of Virginia, something I hope many of you are familiar with. If you're not, download the app now for $20 on your favorite platform. It is a wonderful resource that you will make use of in this project. I guarantee it, and you'll enjoy it. And so 3,100 plus or minus species, quite a lot. I don't know all those species. I know 3 people who probably know all those species, and that is it. The rest of us have to work at knowing more than a few. 600 species out of that list of 3,100, some have been naturalized. So they are species that did not evolve in North America or Virginia, but were brought here by human activity over the last 500 years. 600, that's a lot. But our DCR plant list has 90 species listed. How did we get down to just 90? In some ways, it could be longer. In some ways, it could be shorter. How does this happen? How do we get to 90? This is what I'm going to go into specifics of now. So plant species on our list arrive there through a process, a risk assessment analysis that takes this definition and then tries to look at a specific species and then provide evidence for its introduction, evidence for the harm that it's causing to the ecosystem or the economy or directly to human beings. There is one plant I could talk about, but I'm probably not going to have time to do that today. And that is all as easy as this flow chart here. So I'm not going to have you study this, but the essential things to notice here is these questions right here in the center in these boxes. Does Virginia have suitable habitat for a particular species? Does that species threaten natural resources? And can the species be eradicated or maybe controlled? So that's a big part of what our assessment process identifies. So you're out in the woods and you're looking at a patch and you know these species. Oh, look, I've got some wavy leaf grass and I've got some privet, and it looks pretty bad because these aren't the things I used to have here 20, 30 years ago. So clearly this is invasive. Well, it might be from your perspective, but we have to take a bigger look at this. So we use this protocol that was first developed by NatureServe, a spinoff of the Nature Conservancy. And this protocol, DCR, was part of developing, and this has been then adapted to Virginia. And basically, the protocol, we want to look at several things: ecological impacts of a species, the current distribution and abundance, and this is something very important for this project. Adding data to our understanding of distribution and abundance helps us determine invasiveness and threat from a species, and trends in distribution and abundance. So not only is it here, is it increasing? Is it spreading? Those are important questions that this project will help address. And then finally, management difficulty. How hard is it to get rid of once you've got it? And all of us gardeners know that some species are easy as pulling and others seem to require everything you have in your toolbox, including chemicals. So invasiveness rank, that is the outcome of the risk assessment, indicates how much a species may do these things: alter ecosystem processes such as succession, light availability, water or soil chemistry, hydrology or fire regime, invade undisturbed natural communities, cause substantial impacts on rare vulnerable species or natural communities, be widely distributed or generally abundant where present, disperse readily to new areas, resist control. I'm going to review these now briefly with a few examples, vivid examples. This is a view of Back Bay, large marsh system in the southeast corner of Virginia. Many of you may be familiar with. Everything you see there that is not a tree or shrub, all that other green is Phragmites australis, an introduced tall grass species that has converted 6,000 acres of a 10,000 acre marsh in Back Bay over the past 50 years into nothing but pretty much only Phragmites. So this is a worst case scenario invasion introduced about 40 years ago, and going from just a few acres to 6,000 acres just in Back Bay. Throughout Virginia, it's probably occupying something like 15 to 20,000 acres of formerly diverse wetland habitats. And this species, in its process of taking over, alters ecosystem processes. It alters water flow. It alters fire regimes. That's a habitat now much more volatile than it would have been. It affects light availability for anything that's not 15 feet tall, and it influences soil and water chemistry and flow. And you can see it here creeping out. It will alter, unaltered habitat. So it can enter into undisturbed habitat and turn natural wetlands, even a ponded situation like this, into emergent grass habitat. And then it's very aggressive and is very adaptable to a wide range of habitats here. And this might also be an example of resisting control. I think that the owner of this pool probably had a filter. I don't know what happened, but this is an extreme case of Phragmites invading all kinds of habitats. Other species that I'll talk about here are wavy leaf grass. It will invade undisturbed natural communities. This species is popping up in the middle of remote areas of Shenandoah National Park, George Washington National Forest, and other places, all on its own. On its own, I mean, not with human help, but it got here somehow, and now it's being spread across the landscape pretty much on its own. It readily disperses to new areas. Another new species, Trappa bispinosa, or two-horned water chestnut, will cover a pond and dominate the pond ecosystem in a short period of time. From introduction to a situation like this is about 3 years. So very bad, and it is checking all the boxes on our invasiveness list. I'm throwing in an extra one here just because of one that it comes out in the protocol, but we don't have it clearly identified. And I thought of it as we're going through here. I'm going to call it synergetic vector for further invasions, or holy meep. And here I'm talking about something related to tree of heaven, which is a common now invasive in Virginia. And many of you are already familiar with it, and it is spread across the state. It's in pretty much every county at this point, but it is now a vector for a second introduced species that is invasive, the spotted lanternfly, which here are the nymphs at a couple different stages of the nymph. And here are adults gathering on the base of a tree of heaven. Tree of heaven in the native range of tree of heaven and spotted lanternfly, which is East Asia. These two are evolved together and live in so-called harmony. Here it is it's a favored tree host for reproducing. It's all across our landscape, so it's giving a great foothold or stepping stone for this species, which can adapt to many other host species, including commercial species like peaches, grapes, etc., as well as native trees, oaks, maples, and the like. But it has plenty of stepping stones to get across Virginia. So that's a bad thing. And that is part of our assessment when we look at all the impacts a species is having. So again, the big part that this project feeds into is current distribution and abundance. Looking at the range in a region, assessing the proportion of a range where there are negative impacts going on, and the proportion of a region's habitats that are impacted by a species, and the diversity of habitats impacted. All this data will come out of this project for the species we're looking at. So very important. So yay, EDDMaps, hooray, Virginia Master Naturalists for helping in this work. So you can see here, this is the current range of Tree of Heaven in Virginia. So spotted lanternfly, which right now is located just around Winchester, has plenty of opportunity to get all around the state. But again, just identifying the plants habitat, we can learn something about the other possible vectors that might come along. So trend is what is happening now? What is the current activity? Is it stable? Is it increasing? Is it decreasing? And we just need lots of data points to figure this out. What is the trend? This is the hardest thing to get at data, especially before something is a big problem. So this is why we need more eyes on the ground, looking at these things and collecting good data, place and time and abundance. And this can help us develop a picture to know what we need to go after. So yay, EDDMaps, yay, Virginia Master Naturalists. This is a recent introduction, Italian arum, beautiful plant, currently only in a few spots, but I know that this map is underrepresented. We need more eyes on the ground. I know there's more out there than this map is currently showing. This is from the Digital Atlas of the Virginia Flora. So this project, very important to help us get more information there. The last part, and I'm just going to be very quick with this. We're not talking about management today, but it's part of our assessment. We look at general management difficulty, minimum time commitment. These are all things you're probably familiar with as a backyard gardener. Imagine it scaling up to landscape levels. Management impacts on natives, that's a very important aspect. Accessibility of invaded areas. Here's that same pond with the water chestnut. This is being controlled by hand. That's one of the best control methods for it, although it's very tedious and labor intensive. Other times we have to deploy massive heavy equipment, helicopters, trucks, and then chemicals to control a species. So that increases the complexity of management, that increases the invasiveness rank for a species. So quickly, when we last revised the list in 2012, 2013, I'd started with a list that was mostly expert opinion. And then we employed this protocol, created a database, added species from other regional lists, deployed EDDMaps data, the NatureServe protocol, recommendations from all kinds of field staff and other experts, and that led us to this 90 species list that you all know and use today. And hopefully in the next year, this will be updated and revised. And I think that is all I'm going to talk about for now. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you for your participation in this project.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Kevin. And hi, everyone. I'm Susan McLaughlin, and I am so glad that you're interested in this opportunity to address and prevent the spread of invasive plants in Virginia. So this is a new VMN project launched just this spring in partnership with Blue Ridge Prism. It's Beth and Virginia's Natural Heritage Program. It's Kevin. And the Center for Invasive Species and Ecosystem Health, also called Bugwood, that's at the University of Georgia. And they created and they maintain and continue to develop the set of programs and apps that are called EDDMaps. And I really need to thank Michelle Prisby for her support in creating this project and establishing it as a volunteer opportunity statewide. So through this project, we master naturalists have the opportunity to help Kevin and his colleagues evaluate the invasiveness of plants, as Kevin described, but also to help our communities learn about the spread of non-native plants. So we can contribute not only to the collection of data on the spread of plants already known to be invasive, but also for those whose spread is less well documented and whose invasiveness is not yet clear. And so such data is really essential to determining the extent to which non-native plants are escaping and spreading, as well as to create the basis for informed action and policy. And we master naturalists, because we're located throughout Virginia and routinely outside enjoying and protecting our natural world, are perfectly situated to provide this essential data by merely reporting what we see around us in our particular corner of the state. So what is EDDMaps anyway? EDDMaps is a set of programs for reporting, mapping, and managing data on invasive species using a website and a suite of applications. It's heavily used across the country by natural lands managers and conservation organizations for measuring the spread and impact of invasive plants, or actually invasive species more broadly, and to determine where to direct resources for the control of those species that are threatening the health of our ecosystems. The two components of EDDMaps that we'll be using for this project are the website, which offers many terrific educational tools, as well as a means for reporting your sightings of invasive plants, and EDDMaps applications for smartphones and iPads. So these programs are useful for reporting and managing invasive species of all types, insects, reptiles, and so on, but we'll be focusing on plants, of course. Now, the integrity, the accuracy, the credibility of EDDMaps data, which is essential to the data's usability in research and management and policymaking, depends on its system of verification. So when we submit a report to EDDMaps, that report will be reviewed by one of the verifiers, who are people who are subject matter experts. And not until a verifier approves a report does it become publicly available and part of the data set. Now, there is an enormous amount of data in EDDMaps, in EDDMaps. But when it comes to data on the escape of non-native plants throughout or across our state, efforts to determine plant invasiveness and educate our communities suffer from a paucity of data. So here's an example. You surely are familiar with Vinca minor, otherwise known as periwinkle. It's commonly used in landscaping and as a ground cover, and it's readily available for sale, for purchase online, in nurseries and in garden centers. And we frequently see it spread into parks and natural areas. So Virginia and many other states recognize it as an invasive plant. And here you see it on our Virginia's list of invasive plants, the list that Kevin showed you earlier. Now, however, as you can see from this distribution map from EDDMaps, there are very few reports on the spread of this plant. Now, the dark green up in the upper right shows us that in Fairfax County, there is an individual or some organization that has submitted numerous reports on its spread. But in most of the state, there have only been one or a couple of reports per county. And in many counties, there have been no reports whatsoever. So I should note that a report is never of a plant in a maintained garden. Only those reports that are of escaped plants, not ones that are intentionally planted, are approved and included in the data. So it often happens, by the way, that there are more reports in urbanized areas of the state, in part because there are more gardens there from which plants can escape, but also simply because there are more people there, including higher numbers of people, in actual numbers, not by percentage, who have an interest in environmental protection, so therefore are submitting EDDMaps reports. But personally, I see a real disconnect between that and where our natural areas are located. We need more reporters who are located in rural areas of the state. And one of the beauties of Virginia Master Naturalists is that volunteers are located throughout the state. So you can click on a county to see how many reports there are. And this only reflects verified reports. But Albemarle County shows only 3 reports. But we, of course, know from experience that Vinca minor is present in many natural areas. And we can see here that it is underreported. It could be that people have submitted reports that are not yet verified, by the way, but even so, if that's the case, those surely would not make a dent in the data gaps that we see here. And so this limited data is insufficient to help Kevin in his efforts to evaluate any trends in the spread of the plant. But moreover, if any of us are interested in talking to our local nurseries, to our city's environmental staff, to elected officials at the local or even the state level, we need sufficient data to portray the impacts that these states are having, that these plants are having in our local areas. We need to be able to show our local decision makers that this issue is relevant to them, to their communities, to their customers, to their constituents. So we need data to relay a story, to drive the message home that these plants are damaging our local landscapes, agricultural areas, and ecosystems. You may have heard about House Joint Resolution 527, which was approved this spring, which calls for a study to explore options for phasing out the sale and the use of invasive plants in Virginia. And a work group has now been convened to discuss those options. Didn't mean to move forward so quickly, but initiatives such as that one, whether they lead to voluntary or to regulatory measures or both, will highly depend on the availability of abundant, credible data to justify any actions to reduce the sale of any given plant. And that's why our efforts are so important. So in line with those needs, and to focus our efforts on a small set of plants where data is needed but lacking, we have created a list of 20 non-native plants, each of which is available in the retail trade. All of these have been observed spreading. Assessments on some of them, English ivy and vinca, for example, have already shown that they harm the environment, and they're already on the Virginia list of invasive plants. Others, such as Nandina and Rose of Sharon, have been observed spreading, but their invasiveness is not yet clear. That said, you are welcome and encouraged actually, to report on any and all escaped non-natives that you encounter, but we are specifically requesting reports on these 20 species. We'll provide you with information, including images, on how to ID these plants, and we may send out alerts for these plants at times of year when they emerge or they are easy to identify. or easier to identify. It could be, say, Callery pear or Bradford pear in the spring when it goes to when it blooms, or maybe beefsteak plant in the summer when it emerges and goes to flower. Now, there are many opportunities for contributing to this project, and Virginia Master Naturalist chapters and individual volunteers are encouraged to develop activities that fit with your own interests, your own regions, and your other ongoing projects. So let me tell you about some of the potential activities that you could conduct for this project. You could be a lead for your chapter. Chapter leads coordinate EDDMaps activities for the chapters. They also participate in idea sharing and planning meetings with the leads of other chapters. About half of our chapters have leads at this point, but chapters may also choose to have multiple leads. You can conduct training for fellow chapter members or for the memberships of other community groups, such as Master Gardeners or Friends groups, say Friends of Dyke Marsh in Fairfax County, Friends of the Middle River in Augusta County, or any of the many Friends groups for your local parks. Training can be in person, it can be virtual like this, or it can be in cooperation, and it can be in cooperation with other chapters. You could develop data collection activities. And this could be, for example, creating outings for chapter members to natural areas to collect invasive plant data. It also could just be making EDDMaps an element of other activities, existing activities of the chapter, or of the outings of other groups in your community, say hikes with a local birding group. You can do this on your own as well. And so individuals can report invasive plant sightings when you're doing other volunteer activities, when you're going on a hike, when you're kayaking, and so on. And as I noted earlier, verification is key to the reliability of EDDMaps data, and we need verifiers. So if you are a plant expert, either through education or through professional experience, and you're interested in this role, please do contact me. In fact, please contact me if you have any ideas or questions at all. This is a collaborative project, and by harnessing master naturalists' wide range of expertise and your enthusiasm, we can power a change in the data gathering on invasive plants across Virginia for the long term. So if this project interests you, and I really hope it does, please take a look at Better Impact to see whether the project has been added to your chapters. Well, Better Impact, to see whether it's been made available to your chapter. And if not, contact your project's chair to ask that the project documenting escaped non-native plants with EDDMaps be added. You may also want to ask the project's chair if they know of other people in your chapter have already started working on this project and in what form. You can also contact me if you'd like to know whether your chapter already has one or more chapter leads. Also, please be on the lookout for announcements on more training opportunities, and maybe even some announcements for some friendly competitions on submitting EDDMaps reports. So thank you everyone very much, and I look forward to talking with you on October 2nd.
Thank you, Susan, for that detailed overview of the VMN initiative documenting escaped non-native plants with EDDMaps. Susan also told you more about EDDMaps, or Early Detection and Distribution Mapping System, and how that invasive reports can be made through EDDMaps website or app. The following video, how to use the EDDMaps app, will give you a short session on how to get started with the EDDMaps app for your smartphone or tablet. The video is instructed by Rachel Carroll, who is a citizen science coordinator of the University of Georgia Center for Invasive Species and Ecosystem Health, or BUGLET.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Carroll, and I am the Citizen Science Project Coordinator for the University of Georgia's Center for Invasive Species and Ecosystem Health. And today I'm going to be introducing you to the EDDMaps app. So hopefully by the end of today's presentation, you'll feel comfortable going out into the field and reporting invasive species, pests, or biological control agents that you may see. To note, I'm going to be showing the EDDMaps app using an Android device. The iPhone app is very similar in design, but where differences do occur, I'll try to highlight them so you are aware of them. So to begin, you're going to need to go to your appropriate app store, whether that's the Play Store for Android or the Apple Store for iPhone. And you're going to need to install the EDDMaps app. And once that's installed, you're going to go ahead and open. And you're going to be greeted with some brief informational slides about the EDDMaps app. So feel free to swipe through. And then we'll go ahead and get started. So before you're taken to the home screen of the EDDMaps app, you're going to need to select the state or province, if you're in Canada, that you're going to be reporting in or are currently located. And this just cues the EDDMaps app to download the appropriate species field guide for you. So I'm going to go ahead and download the Georgia field guide. And once that's downloaded, you'll then be taken to the home screen. So on the home screen, there are two different categories. You have report observation and species information. And under the species information, you have different categories. And these species are species that were downloaded within your field guide. The report observation allows you to also report from the field guide species, but you also have the opportunity to look on the server for all invasive species, pests, or biological control agents. So you have more species that you can select from up here in the new sighting or negative survey. So before we talk more about those two sections, I want you to go ahead and select the three horizontal slides in the top left side, and this will open your dashboard. So on the dashboard, you can easily get back to that home screen. You can change your state or province if you travel for your job or are just traveling and need to report a new sighting that's in a different state or province. You can update your settings as well as provide us feedback if you're experiencing any issues with the app. You would do that through here. So I won't go through every one of these, but just know that the dashboard is where you can easily jump from different sections of the app. So we're going to start by selecting EDDMaps login. And this is where, if you already have an EDDMaps account, you're going to enter your credentials and hit sign in. If you don't have an EDDMaps account, you're going to hit register, and you're going to fill out the information on the screen. Now, reporter category is just, whether you're a professional, a volunteer, or a citizen scientist using the app. And then profile, you can decide whether you want your profile to be public, which it's public if the icon is blue. If you'd like to keep your profile private, make sure that the circle is white. So again, it's whatever your preference is, whether it's public or private.
Down here.
And then you're going to hit register. So I have an EDDMaps account, so I'm going to go ahead and log in.
Come here, Greg.
Don't worry, I've changed my password since logging in. And you're taken back to the home screen. So on here, we're going to begin by looking at the species information category. So I'm going to select plants. Feel free to select whatever you would like. And again, this is just the list of all the plant species from your field guide. And you can easily sort these species by scientific name or common name in the upper top right, whatever you're comfortable with. Or if you know what you're looking for, you can search here in the search button. I'm going to go ahead and pretend I saw velvet leaf. So I'm going to select velvet leaf, where I am then taken to a species specific information page. So this page will look different depending on what species you select, whether it's insects, wildlife, or plant. The information in the detail section will vary. But here, this is for identification purposes. You'll get a brief overview of the appearance of the species and any other information we may have. You can also select the image icon, and you'll be taken to a selected few images from our Bugwood image database that will also help with identification purposes. And you can swipe through. And then if you are connected to Wi-Fi or data, you have this map feature icon that you can select. Again, you need to be on your data plan or Wi-Fi. But the map feature, and we'll do the prompts. So yes, I'll let EDDMaps use my device location. The map feature lets you see the up-to-date point distribution maps that we have, that we have for that species. And so I've looked at all this, and yes, I think this is the species I've seen. I want to report it. You can easily do that through this section by selecting the report button in the top right side, which will take you to the report form. And on the report form, going this way to the report form, some information is automatically filled in where other information needs to be filled in by you. So doing it this way, species is automatically filled in, as well as observation date. You can change observation date if you know you're filling out this report a couple days later. Feel free to update that as needed. And within plants only, you do have the option to add more plants to this report form, to this specific sighting. And you'll do that by selecting add more plants. And you'll be taken to the current field guide list of plants that you have. You have a couple other options down here at the bottom. So this star, which we'll talk about here in a minute, is your My Species list. And so that's a customizable list that you put together. This icon takes you back to the categories. So you can go ahead and select that. And then this icon, which I don't have, but are recent species that you've looked at. So if you have species that you've recently seen, you can go ahead and select them there. Or if you have a species that is outside of the field guide, you can select this search button, and this will take you to all species that are on our server. So if you're interested in a species that is not on your field guide, you can enter it here, and that will be added to the reporting form. So for today, I'll just say I saw Norway maple, and it gets added to this specific sighting. Now, I did want to note, again, this is only for plants, and it assumes that all other information that we're going to discuss here is the same for all species that are listed. So for me, both Norway maple and velvet leaf. And it assumes that the location is the exact same, and we'll go over this in a minute. They're both positive sightings, the habitat's the same, the density's the same. So that's where you want to be careful if you are using this feature, because it assumes that for both species, all the rest of the information is the same. So I'm going to delete that for now and talk about some of the other parts of the reporting form. So when you are reporting an invasive species, a pest, or biological control agent, you're going to want to try and upload images to your reporting form. And this is just important because it assists the verifier in the verification process. So to do that, you're going to select this image icon, and you're going to have a few prompts to go through. And then to upload images to the reporting form, you have two options. You can choose images that you've previously taken of that sighting on your phone, so choose from gallery, or you can take pictures right now in the moment, and that will bring up your camera. So for today's presentation, I'm going to do choose from gallery, and I'll just pick an image that we already have on this phone. And it gets added to this report form. Another feature is hide exact location, and this is worded differently on iPhone, but it's the same function. And this is if you are interested in making sure your report for the general public is seen at a county level. So it hides the exact location. And if you're on private property, this might be important, or it's a species that you just want it to be at county level instead of an exact location. You would select that to turn it on or turn it off. And again, if you have it on, the report form to the public, the report to the public will be shown at county level instead of the exact level. The next part of the form is location. And so if you have your device GPS location turned on, the longer you stand in a certain area, the more accurate your location is going to become. And you're going to want to select this map icon over on the right to just verify that your location is accurate, as well as do some other map features. So this is different on Android and iPhone. So I'm going to talk about Android first and then do iPhone. And so on Android, you have two options for your map feature. You have point and polygon. And point is really good if you have a small infestation or a single sighting. And say this is where I'm currently standing, but the report was actually over here. You're just going to tap the screen, and that's going to move the mark for you. Now, if you have a larger sighting, a larger infestation, you're going to do polygon. And within Android, you have two options. You have freeform or vertice. Freeform is when you touch the screen and just draw the polygon, and it automatically fills it in for you. And so this is the infestation that you saw. If you don't like the free form that you drew, just go ahead and delete it and do it again. Another option is vertice. And what you're going to do for this one is instead of drawing, you're going to tap. So you're going to put points on the screen in a clockwise position to create that polygon. And when you're happy with it, you're going to hit done. And then your location is up to date and accurate on the reporting form. So for iPhone, there is just some slight differences in this feature. So you're still going to have the map icon that you're going to select, and you still have point or polygon options. For point, you're just going to tap the screen and place the point on the map where that infestation occurred. And again, this is for small infestations or a single occurrence, and you'll hit done when you are done. If it is a larger infestation, you're going to hit polygon. And again, in a clockwise position, you're going to tap the screen. So you're going to tap once to start the polygon and continue tapping in a clockwise position until you have completely covered that infestation area. And once you're happy, go ahead and hit done. Or if you want to restart or you aren't happy with the polygon, you can hit the trash symbol and restart as well. So that's the differences between Android and iPhone for this map feature on the reporting form. All right, jumping back to Android and the reporting form. Some other options that you have are time spent, and this is a great option for volunteers to track their hours. So say you spent 10 minutes surveying this area. Infestation status is you have 3 categories, and this is where that species that you've listed at the top, it's positive if you saw that species at the time of the report. So that species was there. It's treated if that species was there and you applied control efforts. And it's negative if that species was not there at the time of the report. And we'll talk more about negative surveys here in a minute. So for this form, I'm going to leave it as positive. I saw velvet leaf during this report. And the other parts are just to the best of your ability. So infestation, pick the best category. For me, this is on UGA campus. I'm going to say it's a yard garden. If you did a polygon for location, your area will be automatically filled in. If you did a point, you're going to have to fill that in. Density is straightforward. How dense was that infestation, or how thick was it? And we'll say this one was pretty small. And then any other notes that you think is relevant to the reporting form and for the verifiers, make sure you add in the notes section. So I'm just going to add that this is an EDDMaps Summit report. And when you're done and everything is accurate to your ability, hit save. And when you hit save, that report is saved to your upload queue, which we'll talk about here in a minute. Or if in your settings you've selected instant upload, which I'll show you, that report is instantly sent to the server and the verification process begins. So one other feature on the species information page I want to talk about is this star button. And again, this star is your My Species list. So I'm going to select it. And we'll try again. All right. So Velvet Leaf has now been added to My Species list. And the My Species list is getting back to the dashboard. My Species list is just a customizable list that makes for easy access for finding and reporting these species. So maybe you only know a handful of species that you're comfortable identifying, or your job is only interested in a couple of species. You can add them to your My Species list for easier finding and reporting purposes. And you can always edit that list using edit. You can add or remove species at any time. You can search it as well as sort it by common name or scientific name. So two other options I want to show you, getting back to the home screen, are under this report observation category. So we have new sighting, which we're going to go ahead and select. And this is another way to get to the reporting form. However, you can tell species is not automatically filled in. So this is where you need to fill in the species that you have seen. And again, you have the different categories, different icons down here at the bottom. You can use My Species list, use the categories, recent species, or search the server. And you will add your species. And it's now been added, and everything else is the exact same as the rest of the form. So you're going to have to add your images. You can update the observation date if need be, hide your location, and so forth. Now, talking about negative surveys, I briefly mentioned that you could do a negative survey the other way through the reporting form, or you can do it through this button. And so a negative survey is just as important as a positive survey. So not finding an invasive species, pest, or biological control agent is just as important. So if you are out surveying an area and you don't see certain species, go ahead and fill out a negative survey. And so again, some information is automatically filled in, like the date, time, but you will have to update your species list. So we'll just do, and we'll add that. Your time spent, again, great for volunteer hours. And then you are going to have to edit your area surveyed. So we're going to hit edit, and we're going to hit that button to quickly go to where I'm located. And then everything else is the exact same as I've mentioned for the map feature for both Android and iPhone. So we're just going to do a point here. And we did not see Velvet Leaf at this location. And again, add any information that you might think is important. And hit save. All right. Now, getting to the upload queue, this is the last thing I'm going to talk about today. So I've mentioned when you've saved your reports, this is where they are saved unless in your settings you have turned on your instant upload. So if you want your reports to be instantly uploaded to the server for verification, that is where you will turn it on. And again, that's in your settings on the dashboard. However, if you don't have that turned on, this is what your upload queue looks like. Again, it's in the dashboard and it's queue. And this is where all your sightings are until you upload them. And you have to be connected to Wi-Fi or data to upload your reports, even for instant upload. So make sure at the end of the reporting session, if they aren't uploaded, to upload them for verification. Otherwise, they just sit on your phone and don't go through the verification process. You can edit your reports until they've been uploaded through the app. So you would just select the report you want to edit and make sure that the information is correct. And if everything is there and you want to upload them, you select this button and go ahead and select the reports you either want to upload or potentially delete. And if you want to upload them, you hit the upload icon here. And if you want to delete them for any reason, you select delete here. And so that is your upload queue. And so with that, I hope you feel more comfortable using the EDDMaps app.
I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to our wonderful partners at Bugwood for making this video available to us. The verification of each report ensures the scientific rigor of this project and of EDDMaps. Each report is reviewed and verified by trained verifiers. In Virginia, there are several verifiers who will look at your report to confirm the plant's identification. To help verifiers more quickly review and verify reports, we have developed some tips for you to keep in mind as you submit reports, which are included in the document Making a Great EDDMaps report, of which you will receive a copy. I'll take a moment to highlight 2 tips for new EDDMaps reporters. So first, when you create your EDDMaps profile, you need to set your profile to list your organization as a Virginia Master Naturalist and your unit/department as your local Virginia Master Naturalist chapter. Having this information assists the verifiers in quickly identifying you as part of this project and to prioritize your reports. You will need to log in to www.eddmaps.org to update your profile. You'll look for the My EDDMaps, and you can see that it has a red arrow under it in the upper right-hand corner of the web page that you just see. Good photos are also key to expediting the verification process. Some species of invasive plants have unique characteristics that make them easy to identify from a good photo, like Mahonia or Japanese stiltgrass, for example. Many species have a native look-alike. Think tree of heaven versus natives like sumac or black walnut. Or an invasive species may have multiple species in the same genus. Think Japanese wisteria or Chinese wisteria. Including several photos for each record is most helpful to verifiers. EDDMaps accepts up to 5 images per report, along for the captions for each image. And to give you a little bit more context in this slide, make sure you have at least one photo per record. If not, the verifiers will send it back to you for more information. And try to capture the general habit of the plant. And you can see that in the slides of the photos of kudzu here. One is a photo of the entire area of infestation. And then there's some up close photos with of the leaves or the identifying characteristics of the flower of kudzu. For trees and shrubs, try to get at pictures of the bark to help in the identification process. And again, EDDMaps accepts up to 5 images per report. Make sure your images are clear and not blurry. And to help with invasive plant identification, there are several resources that will be useful to you. First, embedded in the app is the information about each invasive plant. We also have a simple guide to the top 20 invasive plants that Susan discussed in her presentation earlier that we'll be getting out to those participating in the project. We also want to introduce several other invasive plant identification resources for you to reference in support of your identification and mapping efforts, and some additional resources for using EDDMaps. So in this slide, I've highlighted, we've seen this document a couple times, the Virginia invasive plant species list from DCR. And we have another good resource is Plant Invaders of the Mid-Atlantic Natural Areas. And then some other publications from the USDA Forest Service. All of these are available through Blue Ridge Prism's website, which is www.blueridgeprism.org, or you can just do a Google search. These resources will also be listed in the document I referred to earlier, Making a Great EDDMaps Report. In here, I just wanted to highlight some fact sheets that are available from Blue Ridge Prism and the Department of Conservation and Recreation. So with that, we want to close our presentations today and say thank you so much for your time and interest in this important Virginia Master Naturalist project. So now, download the app, take a walk, and map a few invasive plants in your community. And we look forward to your questions during the Q&A session on October 2nd. So I also want to say thank you again to Kevin and Susan for joining me today to make this video for you all. And again, reach out to us if you have any questions, and we will see you on October 2nd. So thank you, and signing off.
Okay, just a minute until I get out of here. Okay. Okay, I know this is a lot of information thrown at you, but if you're interested, please contact me, Brenda Graff, at graff_Brenda@hotmail.com, and I will send you a list of resources, all of the ones that she mentioned and several others. And be certain to look at the EDDMaps website itself. It's got lots of information for both training and how to use their tools. So if you're with Native Plant Society and if you have questions, contact me. And if I can't answer them, then I will either ask Susan or one of the other people. That's with the partners that are working on this project. If you are part of the New River Valley chapter of the Master Naturalist, you should contact Chris Sokol and she can help you out. And she will probably be giving training also probably later this spring, I'm assuming, or something like that. So you can do this, Native Plant Society people can do this anytime that they're out, say like in the state parks or something like that. Or if you're birding or kayaking like she was suggesting, or if you're doing like an official field trip, which I'm hoping we're getting more of this springtime and that. I'd had to cancel 2 years ago the field trips down to Hungry Mother State Park, and it was still too much COVID last year, but I'm hoping to contact them this year and see if we can set up some field trips down there. But it's going to take time and practice to learn how to do this if you're really interested. And the verifiers, and we do need more verifiers, as you said. So if you're interested in doing that, I don't know what the qualifications are to become a verifier. I have to check on that with somebody else and let you know if you are interested in becoming a verifier. But this is a good project to work on, probably not until the leaves come out, unless you know for certain that the invasives have got enough identification right now that you can ID them in that when they're in their winter state and that. Okay, let me get out of here then, just a second. Okay, let's see. Okay, let me see.
There's only one question.
Okay, go ahead.
And there is also one comment from Susan McLaughlin.
Okay.
The one question was from Beth, and she says, are they only interested in those, I presume, plants being sold in the horticulture industry?
I'd say no, they're going to be interested in all invasives, but they're really trying to get more data on the ones that are sold by the horticultural industry to see if they could reduce their sale of that. But they're interested in all invasives because not everything is going to be sold by the horticultural industry. Some of them are just going to be coming along no matter what, as she was saying about some other species in that. So no, anything.
Also, Susan McLaughlin says, folks are welcome to submit reports on any and all invasive plants, not just those available for sale. But yes, plants used in landscaping are of special interest. And Diana Bridges says, great program, Brenda, good job.
Oh, thank you.
I agree. It was very informative.
Good, good. So, yeah, it's going to take time in that and practice to learn this. I realize that. So if you don't want to wait, if you want to wait until springtime or something like that, that's fine. And then, as I said, Chris Sokol is probably going to be giving some more training, and I can try putting up this recording on a Google Drive. I've done that for a couple of other projects like the vernal pool and the frog watch. I can put that up on the Native Plant Society Google Drive, so you've got access to this. And if you'd like that, then let me know, and I will set it up and give you permissions to get into it.
Sorry, there is another question.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Diana Bridges says, are wild grapevines considered invasive if they are growing up trees in a forest?
Okay, that question I know has been brought up before. I think it was in the question and answer session with the Master Naturalist conference, which is where I got this one video from. Wild grapes are native, but they can become aggressive. Not as many native plants are, they use the term aggressive instead of invasive. So Diana, that's probably a question to ask Susan McLaughlin, I would think, and see what she says, because I can't remember what they said in the conference with the other video and that. But I just remember that they said it was a native and they consider it aggressive, but if it was a non-native, it would be considered invasive. But I guess ask Susan if McLaughlin, if they want that in their EDDMaps or not. I'm not certain, but yeah.
Brenda, I would agree with what you just said.
So do you want it reported?
I don't think so, no. But keep in mind that if people start to see things that they think are appearing in their local forests that shouldn't be there and are becoming problematic, they're welcome to report those. Okay, it can be, you know, don't not report something because you think you might be wrong, right? The verifiers can discuss it. I would say that generally, yes, a native plant is not going to be considered invasive, right? Particularly not if it's native to that particular region of Virginia.
Right.
So, and I think that's where other people would come down.
Right,
you know,
because I see a
it's-
comment from Ann Raridan saying, I thought by his definition, invasives are only introduced, not native. So, right, so that's why I
That
was
is
saying the natives
That
are
is
considered aggressive rather than.
But again, you know, nativity could also be to a particular region. If something is showing up in a new region of Virginia, then it's not really native. So if people have questions about it, they can submit it, and maybe somebody will get back to them and say, no, we don't, this is native, it's not invasive, period. Right? So I think it's better to submit something if you don't know, and then get some feedback from folks.
And I think you indicated to me earlier that you were going to do FAQs in that too. So that helps for asking the same questions in that.
Yeah. We're developing more and more materials. We just started to work on this last summer, and you know, we're learning as we go along, you know, about how to you know, what kinds of questions people have and what kinds of problems they run into. And anyway, that question about whether or not to focus only on the horticultural plants is the one that comes up quite a bit. And actually, we'd encourage folks to focus on other plants, get used to using EDDMaps, taking pictures and reporting, you know, those species that you already know well. And because you'll get feedback from the verifiers, you know, again, there could be a delay because we need more verifiers. So, but still, you know, and start to just practice with EDDMaps, whether it, you know, you just report a field of Japanese honeysuckle and ailanthus or whatever it is, to start to use the I was going to say profile. What's the polygon feature and things like that. Anyway, so don't hesitate to use EDDMaps just because a plant is not invasive. There's so many parks and so many areas where we haven't yet reported the invasiveness of you know, how plants are spreading. So don't limit yourselves to that.
Okay, any questions from anybody else?
There aren't any more questions on the chat feature.
Okay.
Can I ask one? Can I ask one? So,
Yeah.
okay, so if you report an area as, if you report an area as invasive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you come back a year later, or you're the person removing the invasives, then how do you report that if the area now is cleared of that invasive? Is there a way to report that?
Yes, there are negative, you can submit a negative report saying it's not there. In fact, if you go and you see something there, you see an area of garlic mustard, and then you remove the garlic mustard, in that same report, you can say that it's been treated. You know, so you effectively have killed it. So yes, there's a way to do that. That's advanced stuff you're talking about there, though, Beth. I mean, it's it's when EDDMaps is also used by natural area managers, and if they have so they have a natural area and they go out and they're looking for certain things, and then they don't find something there, they will do a negative report. So you'll see in the app there's that question, you know, whether or not this is whether it's a negative report or a positive report, because people go out and they'll do a survey, and if they don't find something, they can do a negative report. Now that's not what we're doing. That's really more for people who are, you know, who have the responsibility of a full area. But you might work with people with parks, and they might say, hey, would you go out and look at an area and see whether there are infestations of such and such. So but yeah, there is a way to say that you have treated it or you've removed it. Absolutely. And don't hesitate to use the comment section in EDDMaps either. Tell the verifier things that where you just think it could be really, it could inform them about whatever it is. If you don't see there's a box to answer something, but you think they should know something, or use the comment section as much as you need to. Brenda, I also wanted to say that, and just because we started with Virginia Master Naturalists, I mean, I'm a VMN, and we need, as you know, to get a certain number of volunteer hours. So that is why it made sense to work with Virginia Master Naturalists.
Mhm.
But VNPS is obviously a perfect place. I mean, for, you know, because people know plants, people love plants, and people love to protect natural areas. So that's a perfect group of people for it. It just, you know,
You had to start with one group, so.
We did, and we started with people who have an incentive, I mean, excuse me, an
Mhm.
hours incentive to do it. But VNPS, like Virginia Master Naturalists, are all over the state. And as you noted, there's often more reporting in more of the urban areas, right? So because we're all over the state, and particularly with a lot more, you know, in the rural areas where we may have more natural, you know, areas to cover. So it's really great. VNPS is a great place to do it. So I'm a great organization to take this on. So I think it's great that you're providing the training and the folks in your chapter are interested in it. So thanks for doing this.
Okay, well, thank you. Okay, if there is no other questions in that, then I guess we'll end it for tonight. And if you want to get the list of resources from me, go ahead and email me and I'll send you a copy of it then. And I'll get the newsletter out within the next week, and then you can find out what other events are going on in that, and our next meetings in that, or speakers. So, okay, good night, everybody then.
Good night, Brenda. Good job.
Okay, thank you.
Night.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Thank you. Bye.
Okay.